Okay. Hey, Bobby. How are you?
Outstanding. How are you doing today?
Oh, doing great. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. So, you've written a book called Bedlam: The Life and Mind of Earl Sedgwick. Have you written other books, or is this your first one?
This is my first book. It's my first time being an author. I was attempting to be a screenwriter out here in Hollywood and having a little bit of trouble selling my scripts. And got a suggestion from a good friend and a mentor to uh, take the notes that I had used to write the script and try and compile a novel. She thought that it kind of was an interesting story. It was something very different and strange to her, and she thought it might sell, and she was right. I sent it to a publisher, a few publishers, and Kingston Imperial got back to me, said they were interested, and away we went.
Well, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that story about people trying to sell a screenplay and then they converted it into a novel. I'm glad the novel is selling. Selling a screenplay is probably one of the most difficult things people can do. I know I've tried. I've got a couple myself in the drawer that, people read them and they go, oh, yeah, that's great. And then that's the end of it.
It's really crazy how that happens. That's exactly what happened to me. People would read my screenplays, my spec scripts, writing samples. I wrote several iterations of a Bedlam type of a screenplay. Same reaction. This is amazing. It's great. It's different. It's wonderful. We're not into it right now though. Get back to us when you make these revisions. I had one screenplay that I wrote 7 revisions of it, and I finally got a meeting with the entire board of this production company, and they informed me that they didn't have the money to produce a film. And I was like, well, why did you guys have me writing 7 revisions of it? What I liked about writing a novel was that I kind of created my own world. I didn't have to focus so much on moving the story along with dialogue. I could create as much description about the scene as I wanted to. And when I was done, it was like, okay, I finished it, and someone actually liked it, and someone actually produced it. They put their money behind it. It was actually a really rewarding experience. I didn't think I would do it again, but I've been talking to my publisher, and they're interested in book number 2. So I've been tapping away at a few things right now.
I'm glad you got a publisher. Usually they do like series of books because they want quick follow ups.
Yes, they definitely want Bedlam 2. I didn't promise them that. I have some other ideas. We could do a sequel to Bedlam, a series, as you said, but the one I'm working on right now is not related to Bedlam. Hopefully he'll hopefully he'll be happy with it when I'm done.
Also, on your bio, it says that you did work or you're currently working in your family business.
Yes, we have a family business, and we used to be one of the largest mental health providers in Pennsylvania. We've been scaling down slowly. We're not as large as we used to be. But yeah, my mother and father, myself, my sister, my niece, we are all currently involved in the mental health business. We have a couple of facilities in Philadelphia at this time.
Okay, that must be an interesting job.
Absolutely. Very similar to the main character in Bedlam. I did grow up in a mental health facility, basically. In and around it, I should say. My parents did start this business in the early '80s. I was probably in third or fourth grade when they started, and much like many children of entrepreneurs, I spent most of my time in the business. As someone's building a small business, my parents worked their day jobs and they came home after work and they worked on their buildings and, trying to get clients and furniture, et cetera. It's very small, just my mother and my father. My job was kind of be a good kid and stay put, don't get lost and don't get hurt. As they grew their business, I definitely spent like my holidays there, and I spent a lot of weekends there. Not really working, obviously I was too young, but just being in and around the business. So I've seen a lot of interesting things in my lifetime, from some tragic things such as people passing away, some of your favorite people in your life, because I would say they become friends and family of yours after a while, and you see some really great things too, as well as, we've seen people, go get jobs and kind of like, I guess you would say, graduate from our facilities to go on to some bigger and better things. That doesn't happen quite as often in our niche of the business, but it does happen. And I've seen some extremely interesting things, some scary things as well. I've been as I got older and I started to be an administrator of the business, you definitely see some aggressive behavior from some of the clients, even some of the staff, some of the family members. Um, you see a lot of the inner workings of government and how kind of removed they are from the people in this business as far as like the residents. Um, I've seen I've seen a lot. I think my first dead body I saw when I was in maybe fourth grade. I've carried cadavers out of buildings. I've dealt with. I remember when I graduated from college and became an administrator. My parents went on their first vacation, and so I was in charge. I remember that that was my first time really being scared. Someone passed away like almost immediately. It was like as if my parents got in the plane, took off from the ground, and immediately someone passed away. And I do recall very distinctly we had a nurse working at our with our business back then named Gloria. And Gloria came into the administrator's office and she closed the door behind her and she sat me down. She calmed me down. I'm like a 22-year-old kid. I'm scared to death. Like, what do I do? Who do I call? And she took care of. I also remember one night my parents were in town this time, and I was in charge of human resources back then. Well, still a lot of that as well today to do. I do a lot of that today as well. But I remember it was like maybe a Saturday night, and I scheduled nobody to work overnight. And I was in the movies. And I got a call from my mother, and she told me I won't use the language that she used, but she told me in no uncertain terms to get my tail over to the building. And my mother was on one floor, my father was on the other floor, and I was on the third floor. And we sat and monitored our building for overnight that night. It was they were not happy to say the least. But yeah, I've seen just about everything you can imagine.
Well, I'm curious about the motivation for somebody wanting to start this as a entrepreneurial business. Was this part of your parents' background? Were they doctors or something in mental health or?
Yeah, so the way the business started was this. My mother worked in a convalescent home, and she also worked in the suburbs as a caretaker. She was a woman that would come to people's houses in the suburbs, and their older family members would be, there. She was an attendant. The story goes that my mother was in the convalescent home working for the nuns, and she would, she's doing the laundry, she's cleaning the clients, she's mopping the floor, she's doing all those things, and she would walk by the business office and see them counting money. And my mother would say to herself, I'm doing all the work, and they just count the money. And she's like, I could think I could count money, and so she got this idea to start this business. And my father worked for the U.S. government. He worked for the federal government. He worked for the United States Park Service. Actually, my dad was the assistant supervisor for the Park Service downtown in Philadelphia, where the Liberty Bell is, and now the
Oh, okay.
Constitution Center
Yeah.
is. And so, he was very adept at paperwork because that's a lot of what government employees have to do all day long is filing paperwork. So their combined skills and talents and experience kind of made a perfect match. And my mother, and I remember she telling me the story that she needed $10,000 to start this business back in the day, and she went to the bank and they refused her a $10,000 loan. So my father thought, okay, it's over with. I'm going to continue on my life working for the government. She's going to continue doing what she's doing. We'll be happy. Everything's fine. My mother had other ideas. She said, if I can save $10,000, will you help me start this business? Now, bear in mind, this is back in the early 80s. My parents' house in Mount Airy at that time, but when they lived in it at that time, I think it cost them $16,000. So for her to save $10,000 was an astronomical amount of money, especially from a person who was working like manual labor. She's cleaning floors, she's doing all those kinds of things. Well, my mother took on several extra jobs. I'm talking about, again, cleaning floors, cleaning people, whatever she could do. And she saved that $10,000 in 1 year. And so Bob Sr. was forced to follow through with the word and start that business. One funny story, and I'm sure I'm okay telling this story. I tell a lot of stories, so she's going to have to be okay with this one. I went to a little private school called Chestnut Hill Academy in Philadelphia. And, it's a lot of, I would say, wealthy people send their children to that school. We were not one of those people, but I was at the school anyway. And She tells a story that one day she was doing some housekeeping at a house in the suburbs, and she heard the owner's friend come in the front door in the kitchen, and she recognized the voice as one of my classmates' mothers. And my mother tore out of the building, out of the back door, and she said, I never went back to that building. I know they probably wondered what the hell happened to my housekeeper, but she was, she's embarrassed about doing that for a living back then, and didn't want to embarrass me as a student at the school, and had to explain to people that my mother was cleaning floors for a living. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff she did. She saved that $10,000. They started the business. They started with a small house in Germantown. I think it was like a maybe, I don't know, 5-bedroom home, and they eventually grew that business to well over 400 clients, which is a massive amount of people. The average home, privately owned home, personal care boarding home in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania is probably about 15 clients. So my parents controlling 400 beds was an astronomically large business.
Yeah, that's incredible. And a lot of state funding for that as well, right?
Well, not exactly.
No?
The,
Private insurance?
Not exactly.
Okay.
The niche that personal care boarding homes, at least in Pennsylvania, I'll speak only about what I know, at least in Pennsylvania, fall under is that we are unskilled nursing care. We're personal care boarding homes, and we can take care of anybody who needs taken care of, but we mostly focus on the mentally disabled and the impoverished. Okay, so you have this double whammy for them, and they're not covered by, because we're unskilled. They're not covered by Medicare. They're not covered by insurance. We take quote unquote private pay, meaning that their income is then used to pay for their stay. Now, because they're impoverished and many of them have been disabled from birth, they're receiving SSI, which in Pennsylvania is not a great deal of money. You're talking about maybe $600, $700 a month. Out of that, the client has to receive a minimum of $85 in allowance. So the state does allow us, if we're licensed, to apply for, and you most times can receive, what's called the personal care boarding home supplement. That raises up their pay at this point in time about $1,240 a month. If you do the math, it's about $45 a day that the compensation comes up to, which is not nearly enough money, to be completely honest with you. We operate as a small business. We're a family business, so we can make it work. But no, we don't get Medicare, we don't get Medicaid, you don't get insurance reimbursement in our business. Honestly, it's kind of one of the issues that the business has, is that the states don't recognize them as medical care, yet they are charged with coordinating all the medical care. So we are the hub for the doctor. We are the hub for the nurses, the caseworkers, therapists, psychiatrists, et cetera. We have to manage all that, dialysis, anything that these residents need. We are the hub for that, yet we do not get compensated for doing any of that.
Oh, well, that's too bad. But it's a learning experience for me because I knew nothing about this. So thank you for enlightening me.
No problem.
It's not anything I've been thinking about yet. I'm only 60 years old and in fairly good shape, but hopefully the day will come, when I might. I don't know, maybe I'll have to rephrase that. Hopefully maybe the day won't come and I'll just drop dead one day and that'll be the end of it.
Well, I hope you don't drop dead one day. I hope you, pass away as 110 years old, peacefully in your sleep with your loved ones around you. But not everybody's that lucky.
No.
And, we are a kind of a catch-all business. Most of our clients would be homeless without these facilities. I'm very proud of the work that my parents started and that I continued to do. And I love my clients, and our staff loves what they do. They do not do this because they're getting rich. It's not a business that you get into if you want to become a multimillionaire. It's a business you do out of love. And some of the frustration that your audience, if they do go purchase Bedlam, they'll read about is some of the frustrations that I went through as personally, actually, dealing with the state and dealing with the government. And I was young and fresh out of college. You think you know everything, so You think you know better than everybody else, and I still continue to believe that I probably know a little bit more about this situation than probably some of the state regulators do. But yeah, it can be frustrating, but it's ultimately rewarding because again, the people we're taking care of, without these facilities, they would absolutely be homeless.
We've got just about 1 minute left. So your book is called Bedlam: The Life and Mind of Earl Sedgwick. Was this one of your patients, your clients?
No, Earl Sedgwick is based on a lot of different people, but it does follow a lot of my personal life, some of it at least. Um, I what it is a fictionalized memoir. It's about an owner of a mental health facility, and he's struggling from several mental health issues himself, like depression, anxiety, and even some bouts of schizophrenia. And to deal with these issues, he turns to self medication with illegal drugs and alcohol. Now, the book is not a straight narrative. It's instead of like a more of a collection of anecdotes. You get a lot of those stories that you were asking me about before. It's about his residents, his life, his staff, and all the struggles that they endure. But it's a universal story in my opinion because like many of us, Earl thinks he wants to do something more with his life, but he just doesn't know how.
All right, Bobby, we got to wrap this up. We are out of time. Do you have a website you want to give out?
Well, I do not have a website, but your audience can absolutely go to Amazon.com and search Bedlam: The Life and Mind of Earl Sedgwick by Bobby Spears Jr. We'd love your support, and we hope that you enjoy the book.
All right, great. Thanks again for coming on this show. It was nice